Welcome, Algebra 1. This is section 2-2, solving two-step equations. The essential question is, how do you know if I should add, subtract, divide, or multiply first? Let's begin. Let's look at this. What do you do first? 2x plus 3 equals 15. Well, let's see. We learned we could subtract 3 last time, and we could divide by 2 because we want to isolate the variable. Isolate the variable. That's what we learned about last video. Well, I want to isolate the variable. But how do I do that? There's two options here. I got to do both of these. So which one do I do first? And this is where what we learned about today. So you know PEMDAS, where you do parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract? Well, to figure out what you do first, you do the reverse order of operations. So subtract and add is first. Then divide and multiply is next. Then exponents and parentheses. We're more concerned with subtract, add, divide, and multiply right now. Some people call this SAD-MEEP because that's what it kind of spells out. So make sure you want to subtract and multiply first, then you divide and subtract and add first, then you divide and multiply next. So let's practice this. Let's go to that problem. What do I do first? Well, I want to subtract or add. So there's a plus. We want to isolate this x right here. So I'm not worried about this 15. I'm worried about the 2 and the 3 on the left-hand side with the x. I will subtract the 3 first because that's something I can do. So I can subtract that 3 and that cancels out, and I get 2x equals 12. So I subtracted that 3 first. Now I can divide or multiply. Well, to isolate the x, I can divide both sides by 2 because it's a 2 times x. Those 2's cancel out, and I'm left with x equals 12 divided by 2 is 6. And that's my answer. I can go back and check that. So let's just plug that in for fun. So it'll be 2 times 6 plus 3 equals 15. 2 times 6 is 12 plus 3 equals 15. And 12 plus 3 is 15. 15 equals 15. And that checks out. So there's more than just the SAD-MEEP. There's other things that might come before. For example, when one side is a fraction, you want to multiply both sides first. What does that mean? Well, look at this example. Well, left-hand side is a big fraction. And we just want to get rid of that first before we start worrying about adding and subtract, multiply, divide. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3 because the denominator is 3. This will cancel out this fraction, and then I have to multiply everything on the right also by 3. So on the left, these will cancel out. I'm left with x minus 7 equals negative 12 times 3 is negative 36. And then I can go ahead and say, oh, isolate the x. I want minus 7. I have to add 7 to both sides. And my x is going to equal negative 29. So some doesn't always follow that reverse order of operations. Sometimes you have to do this little trick. All right, let's try these out. So pause the video, and let's practice this. So there's two things I have to do. I have to subtract a 12 on this side to get rid of this 12, but I also have to divide by 5. Which do I do first? I must do the add and subtract first, so I'm going to subtract 12 first on both sides of the equal sign because you don't want to cross that. So I cancel out these 12s, and I'm left with 5x equals negative 13 minus 12 is negative 25. And now my next step to isolate the variable x, I have 5 times x, I divide by 5 on both sides. It's trying to isolate that variable. So you get x equals negative 25 divided by 5 is negative 5. I'll check this answer as well. So it's going to be 5 times negative 5 plus 12 equals negative 13. Well, 5 times negative 5 is going to be negative 25 plus 12 equals negative 13. Negative 25 plus 12 is negative 13, and that does equal negative 13, so it checks out. Let's try another. Pause the video. Alright, let's begin. So I'm isolating the variable. It's on the right-hand side this time. That's okay. Well, there's two things I have to do. I have to multiply by 7 to cancel out this divided by 7. I have to add 3. So let's just write it. Multiply by 7 and add 3. Well, which one comes first? With SAD-MEEP, subtract and add first, so this comes first. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides of the equation. So these cancel. M divided by 7 equals 6 plus 3 is 9. Good. Now the next step, multiply by 7. So multiply both sides of the equation by 7. And that's going to cancel out. So the M is 7 times 9 is 63. So there's my answer. And let's check that work. So 6 equals 63 divided by 7 minus 3. 63 divided by 7 is going to be 9. So 9 minus 3, and that reduces to 6. And 6 equals 6, so it checks out. Last one. Pause the video. Alright, let's try this. So this is one of those special cases again. It's a big fraction on the left. So I want to get rid of that fraction first. I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator, which is that 4. So 4 on both sides. When you multiply by 4 of these on the left cancel, I'm left with y minus 1 equals negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And then my next step to isolate the y, I have a minus 1. I must add 1 to both sides. So when you add 1, you get y equals negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. So that's my answer. Let's check it out. So if I plug it back in, I get negative 7 minus 1 over 4 equals negative 2. Well, negative 7 minus 1, that combines to negative 8 divided by 4 equals negative 2. And negative 8 divided by 4 reduces to negative 2 over 1, which is just going to be equals negative 2. And that's negative 2 equals negative 2, and that checks out. We're done.